The day my
It was the
son
hardest
emptied
thing
my
I've ever
retirement
had to
account,
do.
I thought I'd lost
You never
everything
think it
I'd
will
spent
happen to
43
you.
years building.
We had a
I was
beautiful
wrong.
life.
What I
We
lost was
built this
money.
home together.
What I gained
Now it's just
changed the
memories.
rest of my life
It was
forever.
the hardest thing I've ever
My
had
name
to do.
is Margaret Lawson.
You
I'm
never think it
68
will
years
happen to
old,
you.
and until
We
last
had a
spring,
beautiful
I
life.
believed I had done
We built
everything
this
a
home
mother was
together.
supposed to do.
Now it's just
I
memories.
raised my only son,
It was the hardest
Ethan,
thing I've ever
after
had
his
to
father
do.
passed away when Ethan
You
was
never
just
think it will
11.
happen to
There
you.
were no shortcuts,
We had a
no
beautiful
second
life.
incomes, no miracle
We built this
inheritances.
home together.
I worked
Now
double
it's just
shifts
memories.
as a hospital receptionist, skipped vacations, wore the same winter coat for nearly 12 years. Every dollar I didn't spend went into one retirement account. Not because I dreamed of luxury, because I dreamed of security. A small white cottage, morning coffee on a porch, books, flowers, peace. Whenever Ethan struggled financially, I helped him. His college tuition,
It was the hardest
his first
thing I've ever
apartment
had to
deposit,
do.
his wedding,
You never
even the
think it
down
will happen
payment
to
on
you.
his first house.
It was the
Every
hardest
time he
thing I've
promised,
ever had to do.
Mom, one day I'll
You
pay you
never
back.
think it will happen to
I
you.
always smiled.
We had a
I don't want the
beautiful
money
life.
back. I just
We
want
built
you to
this
be
home
happy.
together.
He
Now
hugged
it's
me
just memories.
every Mother's Day,
We had a
called
beautiful
every
life.
Sunday, visited
built
with my
this home
granddaughter
together.
Lily twice a
Now
month.
it's just memories.
Everyone told me,
It was the
Margaret,
hardest
you're
thing
lucky.
I've ever had to do.
You have such a devoted son.
You never think
I
it will
believed
happen to
them
you.
until one Tuesday
had a
morning,
beautiful life.
when my bank manager asked
built
me a
this home
question that
together.
made my entire
Now it's
world
just
stop.
memories.
Mrs. Lawson,
It was the hardest
when
thing
did you
I've ever had
authorize
to
the
do.
withdrawal of
You never think it will happen
$428,000?
to you.
I stared
We
at
had a
him.
beautiful life.
What withdrawal?
We built this home
He slowly
together.
turned his computer
Now it's
screen
just
toward
memories.
me. One
It was the
transfer.
hardest thing
Every
I've ever
penny.
had to do.
Gone. And
You never
beside
think
the
it will happen to
authorization,
you.
my son's
We
name.
had a beautiful
For a
life.
few seconds,
We
I
built
couldn't
this
even
home
hear the
together.
bank manager
Now
anymore.
it's just memories.
His lips were moving,
It was the
but all I
hardest
could
thing I've
see
ever
was the
had to
number on
do.
the screen.
You never think it will happen to
$428,000.
you.
43
We had a
years
beautiful
of
life.
overtime. Missed
We built
birthdays
this home
because I was
together.
covering
Now
shifts.
it's just memories.
Christmases where Ethan
It was
got
the
new
hardest thing
toys
I've
while
ever
I
had to
quietly
do.
wrapped a pair of slippers for
You
myself.
never think it will
Gone.
happen to you.
There has to be some mistake,
had a beautiful
I whispered.
life.
The manager
We built
looked
this home
genuinely
together.
uncomfortable.
Now it's just
I'm
memories.
sorry, Mrs. Lawson.
It was the hardest
According
thing
to
I've
our
ever had to
records,
do.
someone with authorized
You never
access
think it will happen
transferred
to
the
you.
funds yesterday
We
afternoon.
had a beautiful life.
Authorized access?
We built this
Yes.
home together.
Your son,
Now it's just
Ethan
memories.
Lawson, has been
It was
listed
the
as a
hardest
joint
thing
account
I've
holder
ever
for
had to do.
almost 9 years.
You never think
I
it will
closed
happen
my
to you.
eyes. 9
We
years
had a
earlier,
beautiful
after a
life.
minor surgery,
We built this
Ethan
home
had
together.
insisted I add
Now
his
it's
name
just
to the
memories.
account. Mom,
It was the hardest
what if
thing
something
I've ever
happens to
had
you?
to do.
I'll only help if there's an
You never
emergency.
think it will happen to
At the
you.
time, it had
We
sounded
had a beautiful
responsible.
life.
Now it felt like a
We
trap
built
I
this
had
home
signed with my
together.
own hand.
Now it's just
I left the
memories.
bank in a daze
It was
and
the
called
hardest
Ethan
thing I've ever
immediately,
had to do.
straight to voicemail.
You never
I
think it
called
will
again
happen to you.
and again,
We had a
5
beautiful
times.
life.
Nothing.
We built this
Trying
home
not
together.
to panic,
Now
I
it's
drove
just
to his
memories.
house. The driveway
It was
was
the hardest
empty.
thing I've ever had
No
to do.
SUV. No bicycles.
You never think it
No
will happen
sign
to
of
you.
life. His
We
next
had a
door neighbor,
beautiful
Mr.
life.
Collins, was
We built
trimming
this
his
home
hedges.
together.
Looking
Now
for
it's
Ethan?
just
He
memories.
asked. Yes.
It was the
Have you
hardest
seen
thing
him
I've
today?
ever had to do.
Mr. Collins hesitated
You
before
never think it
answering.
will happen to you.
Actually, yesterday,
We had a
a moving
beautiful
truck was
life.
here. They
We
packed
built this home
everything in a
together.
hurry.
Now
A
it's just
moving truck?
memories.
He nodded.
It was the hardest
I
thing
figured
I've
they
ever
told
had
you.
to do.
My stomach dropped.
You never think it
They
will happen
moved.
to you.
That's what it looked
We
like.
had a beautiful
I stood
life.
frozen on the sidewalk,
We built this home
staring
together.
at the empty house.
Now it's just
The
memories.
curtains were gone.
It was
the
the
porch
hardest thing I've
furniture
ever
had
had to do.
disappeared. Even Lily's little
never
pink
think
chalk
it will
drawings
happen
had
to
been
you.
washed off the driveway.
We had a
It was as
beautiful
if my
life.
son's family
We built
had
this home
erased
together.
every trace
Now
of
it's just
themselves
memories.
overnight. I
It was the
finally
hardest
reached his
thing I've
wife,
ever had to
Rachel.
do.
She answered on the
You
third
never
ring.
think it will happen to
Before I
you.
could ask a single
We had a
question,
beautiful
she
life.
said in a trembling voice,
We built this home together.
Margaret,
Now
I don't
it's
know where
just
Ethan
memories.
is.
It
I
was the
frowned.
hardest thing I've ever
What do you
had
mean
to
you
do.
don't know? Aren't you together?
You never think it
A
will
long
happen to
silence
you.
followed.
We
Then
had a
she
beautiful
quietly
life.
replied, He
We
took
built
Lily
this home
3 days
together.
ago, told me
Now
he had a
it's just
business trip,
memories.
and he
It
never
was the
came back.
hardest thing I've ever
In
had
that
to do.
moment, I realized something
You never
terrifying.
think it will happen to
Maybe
you.
I wasn't the only person
We had a
Ethan had
beautiful
betrayed.
life.
Rachel's words
built this
echoed
home
in my
together.
head the entire
Now
drive
it's
to her
just
apartment.
memories.
I'm not
It was
hiding
the
him,
hardest
Margaret.
thing I've ever
I'm
had to
looking for
do.
him too. When I arrived,
think it will
she
happen
looked
to you.
nothing like the confident woman
had a
I had known
beautiful
for
life.
years. Her
We
eyes
built
were
this
red
home
from
together.
crying.
Now it's
Cardboard
just
boxes
memories.
were stacked against
It
the
was the
walls,
hardest thing I've
and
ever
half
had
the
to do.
apartment was empty. She
You never
wrapped
think
her
it will
arms around
happen to
herself
you.
and whispered,
We had
"He
a
drained
beautiful
our
life.
savings too."
We built this
certes
home
her.
together.
What?
Now it's just
She
memories.
nodded, then opened
was
a
the
folder
hardest thing
filled
I've
with
ever
bank
had to do.
statements. He emptied our
You
joint
never think it
account,
will happen to
canceled my
you.
credit cards,
We
and
had a beautiful
disappeared.
life.
I sank
built
into the
this home
couch.
together.
This can't
Now
be
it's just
Ethan.
memories.
Rachel gave a
It was
sad
the
smile.
hardest thing I've ever
I've
had
been
to
saying
do.
that for 3 days.
You never
She
think it will
explained that
happen to
Ethan
you.
had become obsessed with
We
a
had a
man named
beautiful
Victor,
life.
a
We
charismatic
built this home
businessman who
together.
promised
Now it's
incredible
just
returns
memories.
through a private
It was the
investment group.
hardest thing I've ever had
At
to
first,
do.
it sounded harmless.
You never
Then
think it will
Ethan
happen
started
to you.
talking about retiring
We
before
had a
50,
beautiful life.
buying vacation homes,
We built this home
making
together.
one smart
Now
move
it's just memories.
that would change their
It
lives
was the
forever.
hardest thing I've
Rachel
ever
begged
had
him
to
to
do.
slow down. He always
never
gave
think
the
it will
same
happen to
answer.
you.
You have to take
We had
risks
a
if you want a
beautiful
better
life.
future.
We
A
built
week
this
before
home
he
together.
vanished,
Now
she
it's
found
just
brochures
memories.
for luxury
It
homes
was the
and
hardest thing I've
screenshots
ever
of
had to
investment
do.
profits that looked too good to
never
be
think it
true.
will happen to
When she
you.
questioned him,
We
he
had a
laughed.
beautiful life.
You'll thank me
We built
when we're
this home
millionaires.
together. Now it's
Instead,
just
he walked
memories.
away with every
It was
dollar
the
they had.
hardest thing I've ever
I wanted
had
to
to do.
believe there had to be another explanation,
think it will happen
some
to you.
misunderstanding,
We
some
had a
emergency,
beautiful life.
but the evidence
We
kept
built
piling
this home
up.
together.
Then Rachel
Now it's
handed me a
just
folded
memories.
piece of paper
It was the
she had
hardest
found
thing
in
I've ever
Ethan's
had to
desk
do.
after he disappeared.
You
I
never
think you
think
should
it will
read
happen
this.
to you.
It wasn't a
We had a
letter.
beautiful
It was a
life.
handwritten checklist.
We built this home
Transfer
together.
mom's retirement
Now it's
account.
just memories.
Empty joint
It was
savings.
the hardest thing I've
Close
ever
business
had to
account.
do.
Meet Victor on
You never
Friday.
think it will happen
Leave
to
before
you.
anyone notices.
We had a beautiful
My hands
life.
began to shake.
We built
there
this
it was
home together.
in my
Now
son's
it's just
own
memories.
handwriting. Not a
It was the
mistake.
hardest thing
not
I've
an
ever had to
accident.
do.
A plan. For
You
the
never
first
think it
time
will
since
happen
walking
to
into the
you.
bank, I stopped
We had a
asking,
beautiful life.
why would Ethan do this?
We built this home together.
Instead,
Now
a
it's
far
just
more
memories.
painful question entered
was
my
the
mind.
hardest thing I've ever
Who had
had
my
to do.
son become, and
You never
was
think
it
it
already
will
too
happen
late
to
to bring him
you.
back? That
We had a
night, I
beautiful
didn't
life.
sleep. I sat in
We
my
built this
kitchen with
home together.
Ethan's checklist
Now
spread
it's just
across the table,
memories.
reading the same 5 lines over and over, hoping they would somehow change. They never did. Just before sunrise, my phone rang.
It
It was
the
an
hardest thing
unknown
I've
number.
ever had to do.
For a moment, I was certain
You
it
never
was
think it will
Ethan.
happen to you.
Instead, a calm voice said, Mrs. Lawson? This is Detective Maria Bennett with the Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like to ask you a few questions. My heart skipped. Have you found my son? There was a brief pause. Not yet. But you're not the only victim.
We had a
Within an
beautiful
hour,
life.
I was sitting across
built
from
this
Detective
home
Bennett
together.
at the police
Now
station.
it's just memories.
She placed a thick file on the desk. We've been investigating a man named Victor Hale for nearly a year. The name hit me like a punch. Rachel had mentioned him. The detective continued. He targets ordinary people with promises of exclusive investment opportunities. Once he gains their trust,
It was the
he
hardest
convinces
thing
them
I've
to
ever had
recruit
to do.
family and friends.
You
By the
never
time
think
they
it will
realize
happen
it's a
to you.
scam, the money
We
has
had a
already been
beautiful
moved
life.
through dozens of accounts.
We built this home together.
I looked down at
Now
Ethan's
it's just
checklist.
memories.
So,
It was
my
the
son was
hardest thing
tricked.
I've ever had to
Detective
do.
Bennett answered carefully.
You never think it
He
will
may have
happen
started
to
as a
you.
victim. The words
We had a
gave me
beautiful
a
life.
tiny spark of hope.
We built this
Then
home
she
together.
added, but
Now
based
it's
on
just
what we've
memories.
uncovered,
It
he
was the
later
hardest
began
thing
helping
I've
Victor
ever had
bring
to
in
do.
more money. That hope
You never think it
disappeared
will
just as
happen to
quickly.
you.
She slid
had a
several
beautiful
photographs
life.
across the table.
We built this
One
home
showed
together.
Ethan entering
Now
a
it's just
downtown
memories.
office building with Victor.
It was the
Another
hardest
showed
thing
them
I've
having
ever
dinner
had to do.
together only 2 weeks earlier.
You never think
A
it will
third
happen
showed
to you.
Ethan carrying a briefcase
a
into a
beautiful
private
life.
meeting room. He
We
wasn't
built this
just
home
investing,
together.
I
Now
whispered.
it's just memories.
No, the
It was
detective
the
replied.
hardest thing I've
By
ever
the
had to
end,
do.
he appears to have been working
you never
with
think
Victor.
it will happen to you.
Tears filled my eyes.
We had a beautiful
I had
life.
spent years believing
We
I
built
knew
this
my
home
son
together.
better than anyone.
Now it's just
Yet
memories.
somewhere along the way,
It was the hardest
ambition
thing
had
I've
turned
ever
into
had to
greed,
do.
and greed
You
had
never
turned
think
into
it will
betrayal.
happen to you.
As I gathered the photos
the
to
hardest
leave,
thing I've
Detective
ever had to
Bennett
do.
stopped me. Mrs.
You
Lawson,
never think
there's
it
one
will
more
happen to
thing.
you.
She handed me
We
a
had a
small
beautiful
evidence
life.
bag. Inside
We
was
built this
Ethan's
home
cell
together.
phone,
Now it's
recovered
just
from an
memories.
abandoned rental car
It
on
was
the
the
outskirts
hardest
of
thing
town.
I've ever had to
The
do.
phone is locked, she said.
You never
But
think
our
it will happen
technicians
to
found
you.
one voicemail that
We had a
wasn't
beautiful
deleted.
life.
It was recorded
We
just
built this
hours
home
before he
together.
disappeared.
Now it's just
I
memories.
stared at the phone,
It was the
my
hardest
hands
thing I've
trembling.
ever had to do.
Somewhere inside,
You never
my
think it
son's
will
voice
happen
was
to
waiting
you.
for me. The
We had a
detective placed the
beautiful
phone on the
life.
table and pressed
We
play.
built this home
For a
together.
second, there was
Now it's
nothing
just
but
memories.
static. Then
We had
I
a
heard
beautiful life.
Ethan's voice.
We
It
built
was
this home
shaky,
together.
breathless.
Now it's just
Nothing like
memories.
the confident man I had spoken to only weeks before. Mom, if you're hearing this, things didn't go the way Victor promised. I froze. I know you're going to hate me. You have every reason to. I told myself I was borrowing your money, that I'd double it and put it back before you ever noticed. I convinced myself I was doing it for all of us. Tears blurred my vision. But Victor lied. The investment wasn't real. By the time I realized it, every dollar was gone. When I demanded my money back, he said I owed him even more because I'd brought in other investors. Detective Bennett quietly lowered her eyes. The voicemail continued. Mom,
It was the
I
hardest
never
thing
wanted
I've
to
ever
become
had
this
to do.
person. Every lie made the
You
next
never
lie
think it will
easier.
happen to you.
Every bad decision
We
felt
had a
impossible to
beautiful life.
undo. Then
We
came a
built this
sentence
home
that
together.
chilled me.
Now it's just
Victor says
memories.
if I go to the police,
It was the hardest
people I
thing I've
love
ever
could
had
get
to
hurt.
do.
The message
You never
ended
think
with
it will
heavy
happen to
breathing.
you.
If I can
It
fix
was the
this, I
hardest
will.
thing I've ever
If
had
I
to do.
can't, I'm sorry.
You never
I'm
think it will
so
happen to you.
sorry. The recording
We had a
stopped.
beautiful life.
Silence filled the
We
room.
built this home
I wanted to
together.
believe
Now
every
it's just
word.
memories.
I wanted to remember
It
the
was
little
the
boy
hardest
who used
thing
to
I've
run
ever
into my
had to
arms
do.
after school, not the
You
man
never
who had
think it will happen
stolen
to you.
everything I'd worked for.
We had a beautiful
Detective
life.
Bennett finally spoke.
We built this
We've
home
traced
together.
Victor's
Now
organization
it's just
across
memories.
3 states.
It was the
Several
hardest thing
people
I've
have
ever
already
had to do.
disappeared after trying to leave.
You never think it will happen
I looked
to
at her.
you.
So,
We had a
Ethan could
beautiful
actually be
life.
in danger?
We built this
She
home
nodded.
together.
Yes.
Now it's just memories.
For the first time since
was
the
the
money
hardest thing I've
disappeared,
ever had to do.
my emotions collided.
You
I
never
was
think it will happen
furious,
to you.
heartbroken,
It was
betrayed.
the hardest thing I've
But
ever
beneath
had to do.
all of it, I was
You never
terrified
think it will happen
because
to
if
you.
Victor realized Ethan
We
had
had a
left that
beautiful
voicemail,
life.
my son
We
might
built this
not
home
live long
together.
enough to ask
Now
for
it's
forgiveness.
just memories.
For the next 2
We had a
weeks,
beautiful
every knock
life.
on my door made
We
my
built
heart
this home
race.
together.
Every
Now it's
unknown
just
number
memories.
sent me reaching for my
It
phone.
was the hardest
But
thing I've
none of them
ever
were
had to
Ethan.
do.
The police searched
You never
abandoned
think it will
offices,
happen to
rental
you.
properties, and bank
We had a
records
beautiful
connected to
life.
Victor Hale's network.
We built this
Each
home
lead
together.
ended the same
Now
way.
it's just memories.
Another empty building,
It was the
another
hardest thing
fake
I've
name,
ever had to do.
another trail that vanished overnight.
never think it will
Then
happen
on a
to
cold
you.
Thursday evening,
We had a
Detective Bennett
beautiful
called.
life.
Mrs.
We
Lawson,
built this home
we
together.
found your granddaughter.
Now it's just memories.
I couldn't breathe.
It was the
Lily,
hardest thing
she's
I've ever
safe.
had to do.
My knees nearly gave out.
never think it will
Rachel
happen to
and I
you.
rushed to the police
We
station,
had a beautiful
where
life.
8-year-old Lily sat
We built
wrapped
this
in a
home
soft
together.
blanket,
Now
clutching a
it's just
stuffed
memories.
rabbit. The moment
the
she saw
hardest
us,
thing I've ever
she
had to
ran
do.
straight into Rachel's arms.
You never think it will
between
happen to
tears.
you.
She told us
We
what
had
had
a
happened.
beautiful life.
Daddy said we were
We
going on a
built this home
vacation.
together.
At
Now
first,
it's just
they'd
memories.
stayed in nice hotels.
It was the hardest
Then the
thing I've ever
hotels
had to
became
do.
cheap motels.
You never
Finally,
think it will
they were
happen to
sleeping
you.
in the car.
We
Lily
had a
said
beautiful
Ethan
life.
spent hours on the phone,
We built this
arguing
home
with
together.
someone she never
Now
saw.
It's just memories.
Sometimes he would
It was the
slam the
hardest thing
steering
I've
wheel
ever had to
and
do.
whisper, "I just need
You
more
never
time."
think it will happen to
Other
you.
times, he would
We
sit
had a
beside her
beautiful
while
life.
she slept and quietly
We built this
cry,
home together.
believing she
Now it's
couldn't
just
hear
memories.
him. One night,
It was the
he pulled the
hardest
car
thing I've
into
ever
a
had to
church
do.
parking lot. He hugged
You never
Lily
think it will
tighter than
happen to
ever
you.
before. Then
We
he
had a
handed her a
beautiful
small
life.
backpack.
We built
Inside
this
were
home
clean
together.
clothes, her
Now it's just
favorite
memories.
storybook, and a handwritten letter addressed to Rachel. He told me, Lily whispered, "Stay inside the church until someone helps you. Mommy will find you. I love you more than anything." A volunteer found Lily the next morning and contacted the police. I looked at Detective Bennett. "So, Ethan left her somewhere safe?" She nodded. It appears he was trying to protect her. That didn't erase what he'd done. He had stolen my retirement, destroyed his marriage, shattered our trust. But hearing that he had made sure Lily was safe reminded me of something painful. The good man I had raised wasn't completely gone. Somewhere beneath the fear, the lies,
It
and
was
the
the
terrible
hardest thing I've
choices,
ever had to do.
he was still fighting to save the
You never
only
think it
thing
will
that
happen
truly
to you.
mattered. And just
had
as
a
I allowed
beautiful
myself
life.
to believe he might still
We
be
built
alive,
this home together.
Detective Bennett's
Now
phone
it's
rang.
just memories.
She answered,
It was the
listened
hardest
for a
thing
few
I've ever
seconds,
had to do.
then looked directly at me.
You never
"We
think
just
it
got a
will happen to
report.
you.
Victor Hale
We
has
had a
been
beautiful
found."
life.
I leaned forward,
We built this
hope
home
rising in
together.
my chest.
Now it's just
Then
memories.
she finished the sentence.
It was the hardest
but
thing I've
Ethan
ever had
wasn't
to
with
do.
him. The next morning,
You never think it
Detective
will
Bennett
happen to
called
you.
again. This time,
was the
her
hardest
voice
thing I've ever
sounded
had to
different.
do.
We arrested Victor
You
Hale
never think it
just
will
before
happen to you.
sunrise. For
We
the
had a
first time in
beautiful
weeks,
life.
I felt a
We built
flicker
this
of
home
relief.
together.
Then
Now it's
Ethan is
just
safe?
memories.
There was a long
We had a
pause.
beautiful life.
We don't know.
We built
Victor
this
had
home
been
together.
found at a remote
Now it's
lake
just
house
memories.
nearly 200 miles
We had a
away.
beautiful life.
Inside,
We
investigators
built this home
recovered
together.
laptops,
Now
fake
it's just
passports,
memories.
stacks of
We had a
financial
beautiful
records,
life.
and thousands of
We built
pages
this home
listing
together.
victims from across
Now
the
it's just
country.
memories.
My name was there.
had a beautiful
Rachel's
life.
name was there.
We
So
built
were
this home
dozens of
together.
elderly
Now it's
retirees who
just
had lost
memories.
everything.
We had a
But
beautiful
Ethan's name
life.
wasn't listed as
We
another
built this
victim.
home together.
It appeared in a
Now
different
it's just
column.
memories.
Recruiters.
We had a
My
beautiful
heart
life.
sank. Even
We
if
built
Ethan
this
had been
home
manipulated
together.
at first,
Now it's just
somewhere along the
memories.
way he had crossed
We
the
had a
line.
beautiful life.
He hadn't just lost money.
We built this
He had
home
helped
together.
Victor convince
Now
others
it's
to
just
trust the
memories.
scam. That
It was
truth
the
hurt
hardest
more
thing
than
I've
the
ever
stolen
had to
retirement
do.
account ever could.
You never
Later
think
that
it will happen
afternoon,
to you.
Detective Bennett asked
It was
me
the
to
hardest
identify
thing I've
a
ever
few
had to do.
personal items recovered from one of
You never
Victor's
think it will
storage
happen
units.
to you.
Among them was
It was the
Ethan's
hardest
leather
thing
wallet,
I've ever had
his
to do.
old wristwatch, and
never
a
think it
framed
will
photo
happen to
of the
you.
three of us taken
It
on
was the
Lily's
hardest
5th
thing I've
birthday.
ever had to
Victor
do.
had kept it.
You never think it
Then
will
the
happen to
detective
you.
handed me a sealed
It was the
envelope.
hardest thing I've
It was
ever had to
hidden
do.
behind the frame. Across
never
the
think
front,
it will happen
in
to you.
Ethan's handwriting, were
It was the
4
hardest
words.
thing I've ever
For
had to
Mom,
do.
if I fail.
You
My
never think
hands
it will
trembled
happen to
as I
you.
opened it.
It was
Inside
the
was a
hardest
single
thing I've
sheet of
ever had to
paper.
do.
Mom, if you're reading
You
this,
never think it
it
will
means
happen
I
to
couldn't
you.
fix what I broke.
It was the hardest
I
thing I've
deserve
ever
whatever
had to
happens
do.
to me. I don't
You
deserve
never
your
think it will
forgiveness.
happen to you.
But there is one
It was
thing
the
you need to
hardest
know.
thing I've ever had to
The
do.
money isn't completely gone.
You never think
I
it will
stopped
happen
reading.
to you.
My eyes widened. Detective Bennett leaned forward. What does it say? I looked back at the letter. Beneath those words was something I never expected to see. A bank account number, a password, and one final sentence that changed everything. If Victor hasn't found it yet, there's still enough left to give you your future back. I couldn't stop staring at the account number in Ethan's letter. For weeks, I had believed every dollar was gone forever. Now, there was a chance, however small, that part of my retirement still existed. The next morning, Detective Bennett and I walked into First National Bank. The manager escorted us into a private office before opening a safety deposit box registered under a company name Ethan had secretly created months earlier. Inside was a thick envelope, several
the hardest
encrypted
thing
flash
I've ever had to
drives,
do.
a leather notebook,
You never think it
and
will
a
happen to
certified
you.
check. I
We
picked
had
it
a
up with
beautiful
trembling
life.
hands.
We built this home together. Now it's
$287,000.
just memories.
Tears
It
immediately
was the
filled my
hardest thing
eyes.
I've ever had to
It
do.
wasn't everything, but
never
it was
think it will
enough to
happen
give
to
me
you.
hope again.
We had a
Detective Bennett
beautiful
carefully
life.
opened the notebook.
We built
Every
this home
page
together.
contained names,
Now it's just memories.
dates, bank
It
accounts,
was the hardest thing
secret
I've ever had to
transfers,
do.
Victor Hale's hidden
You never
companies,
think it will happen to
dozens of
you.
victims,
We
even
had a
handwritten
beautiful
notes
life.
explaining how the
We
money
built this
had been
home
moved.
together.
She
Now
looked
it's
at
just
me
memories.
with disbelief.
It was the
Margaret,
hardest thing
this
I've
is
ever had to
everything
do.
we've been trying to find.
You never
I
think
frowned.
it will happen to you.
What do you mean?
We had a
Ethan
beautiful
documented the
life.
entire operation.
We built this home
She
together.
immediately called
Now
the
it's just
Financial Crimes
memories.
Task Force.
It was the
Within
hardest thing
hours,
I've ever had to do.
agents were executing search warrants
never think it
across
will
3
happen to you.
states. Frozen
We had a
accounts,
beautiful life.
hidden warehouses,
We built this
shell
home
companies.
together.
Everything
Now it's just
started
memories.
collapsing. As
It
I
was the
watched
hardest thing I've
investigators
ever
rush
had
out
to
of the
do.
bank carrying boxes of
You
evidence,
never think it will happen
one
to you.
painful realization
We had a
settled into my
beautiful
heart.
life.
My son
We
had
built
stolen
this
from
home
me,
together.
but
Now
before
it's just
disappearing,
memories.
he had risked
It
his
was the
own
hardest
life
thing
trying
I've
to
ever
destroy
had
the
to do.
man who had destroyed so many
never
others.
think it will
For
happen
the
to
first
you.
time since this
We had a
nightmare
beautiful
began,
life.
I wasn't wondering whether
We built
Ethan
this
had
home
changed.
together.
I
Now
was
it's just
wondering
memories.
if he was still
It was the
alive
hardest
long
thing
enough
I've
to
ever
face
had to
what he
do.
had done. 3 weeks
You never
later,
think it
the
will
federal
happen to
courthouse
you.
was packed.
We had a
Families from
beautiful
across
life.
the country filled
We built
every
this home
seat.
together.
Some had
Now it's
lost
just
retirement
memories.
savings.
It was
Some
the
had
hardest
lost
thing I've
businesses.
ever had to do.
Others had lost their entire
never think
future.
it will happen
Victor
to you.
Hale entered wearing
We had a
handcuffs.
beautiful life.
For the first time,
We built
the
this
man
home
who had
together.
manipulated
Now it's
hundreds
just
of families
memories.
looked frightened.
It was the
The
hardest
prosecutor
thing I've
spent
ever had to
hours
do.
presenting evidence.
You
The
never
flash
think it will
drives,
happen to you.
the notebook, the
We had a
financial
beautiful
records.
life.
Everything Ethan
built
had
this
hidden
home
inside the
together.
safety
Now
deposit
it's
box
just
became the
memories.
foundation
It
of the
was the
government's
hardest thing
case.
I've ever had
Then
to
the
do.
prosecutor said something that
You
made the
never think it will
entire
happen
courtroom
to you.
silent. The
We had a
individual who
beautiful
secretly
life.
preserved this evidence
We built this
understood
home
he would
together.
likely be
Now it's just
prosecuted
memories.
himself. A
It was the
photograph of
hardest thing
Ethan
I've ever
appeared
had to
on the
do.
courtroom screen. He
never
knowingly
think it
chose
will
to
happen
expose
to
the
you.
criminal organization,
We had a beautiful
despite
life.
understanding it would also
We built
expose
this
his
home
own
together.
crimes.
Now it's
Rachel
just
squeezed my
memories.
hand.
It was the
Tears
hardest thing
streamed
I've
down
ever
her
had to
face.
do.
Detective Bennett
You never
quietly
think it will
leaned toward
happen to
me.
you.
He knew this would
We had a
probably
beautiful
send him to
life.
prison. Victor was
We built
found
this home
guilty
together.
on
Now
every
it's
major
just
charge.
memories.
His
was the
assets were
hardest thing
seized.
I've ever had to
Millions
do.
of dollars would finally be
You never
returned to
think it will
victims.
happen to you.
But as everyone
We had a
celebrated
beautiful
justice,
life.
one chair
We We built
remained
this home
empty.
together.
Ethan's.
Now it's just
No one
memories.
knew where he was.
It was the hardest
As I
thing I
prepared to
ever
leave
had
the
to do.
courthouse, Detective Bennett
never
hurried
think it
toward
will
me.
happen to
Her
you.
phone was still in her
We
hand.
had a beautiful
Margaret.
life.
I stopped.
We built this home
We just
together.
received a call.
Now it's just
My
memories.
heart started racing.
It was the hardest
It's
thing
Ethan.
I've ever had to
The call
do.
came from a small sheriff's
You never
office
think it will
nearly
happen to
400
you.
miles away.
We had
Ethan
a
had
beautiful
walked in
life.
alone. No
We
lawyer.
built this home
No
together.
negociation.
Now it's just
No
memories.
attempt to run.
It
His
was the
first
hardest
words were
thing I've
simple.
ever had to do.
I want to confess.
You never
A
think
week
it will
later,
happen to
I
you.
visited him. When
We
he
had a
entered the
beautiful
visitor's
life.
room, I barely
We built this
recognized
home
him.
together.
He looked
Now
thinner,
it's just memories.
older, broken.
It was the
For
hardest
several
thing I've ever
seconds,
had to do.
neither of us spoke.
You never think
Finally,
it will happen
Ethan
to you.
whispered, I'm
We
sorry,
had a beautiful
Mom.
life.
I kept
We
telling
built this
myself
home
I was going to
together.
replace your
Now it's
money
just
before you
memories.
noticed.
It was the
But
hardest
every
thing
life
I've
forced
ever
me
had
to
to
tell
do.
another. I didn't
You
become
never
a
think it
criminal
will happen to
overnight.
you.
I
We
became
had a
one decision
beautiful
at a
life.
time.
We
I
built
quietly
this home
listened.
together.
No
Now it's
excuses.
just memories.
No blaming Victor.
It was the hardest
Only
thing
responsibility.
I've ever had to do.
I know you may never trust
You
me
never
again.
think it will happen
I
to
don't
you.
expect you to.
We
I
had a
just wanted you to
beautiful
hear
life.
me admit that
We built
everything
this
was my
home
fault.
together.
I
Now it's
reached
just
across the
memories.
table. I
It
forgive
was the
you,
hardest
Ethan.
thing I've ever
His
had to
eyes
do.
filled with tears.
You never
But
think it will
forgiveness
happen to
doesn't
you.
erase consequences.
We had a beautiful
You still
life.
have to accept them.
We
He
built
nodded.
this home together.
I know.
Now it's just
Months
memories.
later, most
It
of the
was the
stolen
hardest
money
thing I've
had been
ever had to
recovered
do.
through the federal restitution
You
program.
never think it will
I
happen to
finally
you.
bought the little white
We had a
cottage I had
beautiful
dreamed
life.
about for decades.
We built this
Every
home
morning,
together.
I sat on
Now
the
it's
front
just
porch with a
memories.
cup of coffee,
It was the
watching the
hardest thing I've
sunrise.
ever had to do.
Peace had returned, not
never
because
think it will
life
happen to
became
you.
perfect, but
We had a
because I
beautiful
learned
life.
something far more valuable
We built
than
this
money.
home together.
Never give someone
Now it's just
unlimited
memories.
access to your future
It was the
simply
hardest
because
thing
they
I've
share
ever
your
had to
last
do.
name. And whenever people
never
ask
think
me
it will
whether I
happen to
still
you.
love my son,
We had a
I
beautiful
always
life.
give the same answer.
We built this
Love
home together.
never disappeared.
Now it's just
Trust
memories.
did.
And trust must always be earned back.